So in describing, the different programs that I feel good that there's enough experience in, it's really based on what I call an avatar, where if you give me a little bit of information about this individual that's going to go through this training process, that's an avatar. And I would start to think of a type of program on how we build out microcycles, mesocycles, macrocycles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it's really just how I think. I don't think it's that special, where you can see what lots of people are doing, where they base everything on these concepts, these core values, and these programming approaches. I don't find it difficult to kind of just, no, we're just going to take that part. I think years ago when Mike Boyle would say, oh, we do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of this, and it comes out like shit soup. I 100% agree, just like I don't know what I would vehemently disagree with anything that my older brother Mike Boyle would say. I'm not describing something you take. No, this is all my way. This is all my way of doing it. I don't think I'm taking a little bit of this and a little bit of this and mixing it up and getting any kind of soup, whether it's shit soup or not. And the way I want to think and communicate, like, everything kind of can work unless it's just completely asinine. There's many ways to get there, but I look at the avatar of the person training, and this is actually a little bit contemporary for me because I think I would have had 4, but then I recently had 5 or sub 1, just given a new athlete that was presented to me who I have not started working with yet, but would be a category slightly different to understand why this individual is generational in his skill and his performance, but miserably injured for his entire professional career. So let's start with the first avatar, which would be a professional athlete or someone with a very, very high training age, or someone with a very, very high training age and a specific physical task that they're training for. I would use Elite Performer Program, where we build out these repetitive microcycles. You can get EPP on T equals R plus, but it's just repeating microcycles, which has a component of influence from West Side. West Side conjugate. If it's not at West Side, it's not West Side. Who knows if it'll ever be the same again. But repeating weekly microcycles, where there's concepts that we talk about on EPP, where if you miss one day, there's a prioritization, et cetera, where we are primarily working on sport-specific work capacity. And what that does is really allow for less exercises, and that's the importance of having a task. Because if every task has a finite amount of movements, so we don't have to do a whole bunch of exercises. Well, not that there's not value in doing a whole bunch of exercises. It's just that if they are only going to be doing these things, like for instance, a golfer hinges, rotates, and does so explosively. So there's a lot of movement pieces to that, but that's the physiology and mechanics, etc. So why would we do other things? Because if they're elite and they have a high training age, that's the two. The avatar is very targeted / elite athlete, but also high training age. So the real world example at Canada Basketball, until you were identified as a one and done, you didn't use this program. You used a different one that I'll talk about next. But if you were a one and done or already a professional basketball player, the A recommendation is this is how you should train. So I think there's other components. If you are that individual, it is brilliant to use EPP in the case of high training age, but injured, legit, immobilization phases, where you can then target these work capacity components that'll all be related to enhancing and accelerating the healing process. Hormones, immune, central peripheral cardio. Bingo, you've heard it a million times. But that's the avatar, is someone that has high training age and a very, very targeted movement profile for their activity. That's one profile. Now, the next one, which can be used for anyone, and I would call it a mixed model, certified functional strength coach, MBSC form of training, where you're doing a little bit of everything and delivering as much as you possibly can. But I don't think you would be exceedingly high in any one thing. I think it's a brilliant way for any athlete to train, any general population. It is far less negotiable, for a very, very older athlete or an older person. It is non-negotiable for young athletes because I want them exposed to all sorts of movements. I might be limiting what I am getting carryover and specificity, but they're not a professional athlete. And then you go using the Canada basketball example, tons of Division I players, these are elite, but they are not going to have a long career as a professional basketball player. I would recommend this type of program. Coming off of injury, you have EPP, but you have this as well, where you can toggle things. Lateralizations and regressions would apply to all of these plans. All of these things can be populated with any exercises that you want. What are the most ideal maybe don't matter when you're doing this mixed model. You could say every workout is total body. Every workout has a component of power. Every workout has a component of strength. Every word you can do, conditioning, which probably has lots of different opportunities to get better at. This is also probably the best way to run some type of American or Western-based commercial business. You can take longer rest periods and up the weights. You can take lesser rest periods to get it done in an hour or work on other things because top-level strength may not be something that's important for these populations. Again, general population, okay? Older people, little kids, younger athletes, older athletes, and then coming off injury. That's the avatar. Those are the people where done. Like they get this program. Where if you have that program already kind of mapped out in your brain, those are the people I would work with. And I've said before, minimum 85%. I'm just picking a random number. That is the way I would program for most people. The next group, young athletes, medium to high training age, but that don't necessarily have high demands on their time or sport-specific practice schedule. So all they have to do is train. And I'm not sure this is very, very common as the years have gone on. It was very common for us in Toms River where, if you were not an athlete, you were kind of something else. We were almost compelled / told that 1 out of the 4 or 5 seasons, depending how you count the summer, had to be the weight room. And if you were really, really good or special in one sport, you weren't allowed to, kind of play another sport that bled into that season, for instance. But that's where I would do as traditional West Side as possible. Why can't that live with other demands? Well, you need more workouts than just 4, and those 4 might take longer than an hour. And the central nervous system demands of particularly those 2 maximal effort days do not lend well to other types of activities. So all those other activities might be some secondary or recreational type of sport where it's like CYO basketball. It's not travel. It's not AAU. It's not these other things. It's something that doesn't matter, particularly if you don't show up. Or if it's baseball, you're not going to pitch. You're going to play some other position or you'll pitch whenever you want to, where it's like wild to think that would be an option in some of these horror stories, because there your main sport is to develop in these qualities. I don't think West Side is the only, conjugate is the only approach. Getting into something like, and this is for maybe even a higher training age where there's less exercises, is something like Bill Starr 5x5, or call it power bodybuilding or whatever, where you just pick 3 exercises and you still have that toggle switch of, do I do them all in sequence? Do I do these at a huge rest intervals so I can get into these 4th and 5th sets and really blow it out? And when I get to Friday and I hit my 1 set of 3 before I hit my 1 set of 8, that 3 then becomes my 5 for the following week. That really lends very, very well to somebody who did start training, maybe using MBSC, and then when they become 16, 15 plus, 16, maybe when they're summer before college, then they go to this. Because now testosterone and ability to sleep, you have all of these things aligned, and it's very hard though to put that in without the high training age. I think there's a sequence there that has made the most sense for the people that I have worked with. And it also, again, my perspective, to be clear, not 100%, but a lot of these entry points come from individuals that are injured. So where do we plug them in? And I didn't always kind of know how to program for EPP. Next, injured people, where right now it depends if it's a low training age, that's a different avatar. injured low training age, we actually just create what will eventually become warm-up number 3. What are the exercises that once you get to them, we've seen this on ACL in action, and I think it's appropriate for any lower body training. We would do some combination of single leg stance, and we're throwing a ball and you can hit your little lights, which I think is ridiculous. You could even use an unstable surface. Hopefully it's a flat surface. And what are we really doing? Oh, you're working on balance. No, we're working on probably type 1 restoration of the quad if you use a knee dominant strategy, a knee strategy for your balance. You could probably rig the single leg stance in a lot of different ways to not only focus on a soft tissue injury, but a ligamentous injury. There are single leg stance strategies that can focus load to an MCL, a PCL. It lives in Eldoa land. These are really very, very interesting and, when they work, magical things. And they have sound rationale when you understand that particular model. So we would do that. Number 2, we would do some type of level change. And we'd be doing upwards of 250 repetitions, where if there is an injury on one side and it is appropriate, we will use some type of reactive neuromuscular training strategy to force load on that side, where the band pulling you in one direction gives you the choice to fall over or load the injured side. We would do tons of high levels of repetitions there as well. We would do some type of local tissue. Hopefully we can get on a machine if it's a quad or if it's a hip or if it's a calf, where we're going to work individually there. There's different things that we would always look at for those lower body injuries. That might become their training, and then that becomes something that they do all the time to always stay ahead of those connective tissue challenges. Then you plug that in, and then as time moves away from what is more therapy, manual therapy, other exercises that maybe require something that you need the therapist to be there, then you move on to something else. And you use that as part of the warm-up. Maybe you lower the intensities, and then you move into the next thing. So that avatar is someone who's injured. Review. Number 1, elite athlete, high training age. Okay? Everybody that would fit inside this middle left would be general population, old people, young athletes, older athletes trying to hang on, and somebody recently coming off of injury. Then that's 2 avatars. 3 avatars, this young athlete with a high training age, but they're not in one sport. That's where you go meathead. That's where you go hard. That's where you go North Jersey style of training that was certainly popularized several years ago. I think it is fair to say that when you talk about North Jersey training, you should talk about a whole lot of other things that go a part of that culture that are not legal or safe. Then now we're talking about people that are currently injured. That's another avatar where you just build out exercises. Maybe there's another avatar that would be someone with a very, very low training age. And then we just look at filling in, I call it sim fit.